Good evening and welcome. My name is Virginia Johnson and I'm Artistic Director of Dance Theater of Harlem. Tonight we have a conversation with Tania León. Tania León is such an important part of Dance Theater of Harlem. She actually was our very first conductor, but she was also our very first composer. Tania and I have known each other for many, many years, and so it was a lot of fun to reminisce and think back over the years with Dance Theater of Harlem. So ladies and gentlemen, a conversation with Tania León. So Tania, my goodness, we've known each other for 50 years.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
50, 51, 50, 50 and a half.
50 and a half, exactly. That's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. So tell me how you came to be in New York. I know that you're from Cuba, but how did you get to New York?
Well, I mean, it's a very strange situation because, I mean, that was not my intention. I wanted to go to Paris, to France. But wow. At the time of my leaving Cuba, the only opportunity that I had was a free flight. You know, there was some program called Freedom Flights for people that wanted to migrate. And my number, I mean, you had to apply and wait for a number. And that is the only lotto ticket that I have ever made in my life.
How did you come to be at Dance Theater of Harlem? How did you find us?
And, being at NYU is that a friend, Laura Wilson, you know, is her name. I don't know where she's at right now, but she was playing for a school of ballet in Harlem. And that weekend, you know, she said that she couldn't play because she was getting the flu and she felt very bad. So she asked me if I could replace her that weekend. And she gave me her books and she explained to me what to do. You know, that was the first train that I took to Harlem. I was very, very, very enthusiastic because, I mean, I've seen Harlem in the movies and, you know, and I have not been in the United States, not even, I mean, months only. Wow. So this is what happened just after I got into NYU. So the thing is that I went there, and to my surprise, now we know the name of the organization or the institution, but the classes were given at the Harlem School of the Arts. So I took the train, you know, to 145th Street.
Yes.
Exactly. Then walked to 141st. And I was greeted there by a woman that I didn't know either. And of course, you know, I didn't know anybody, but this woman was striking looking, you know, I mean, later I found out that her name was Dorothy Maynard and that she was a very, very famous singer that had opened this school for students that didn't have the possibility to go to a private school, things like that. And since the whole thing was in a studio with a baby grand piano, I was just, you know, in the glory because I didn't have a piano. So therefore, I started playing and playing and playing. And in one of those instances is when the door opened and this gentleman crossed the room and I followed him because, I mean, he was striking, you know, I mean, it's like somebody that came out of the movie. And the way, you know, I mean, the walk, the posture, the everything. And I said, my God, who's this? So I went back to the Harlem School of the Arts and I found myself in a room. And in this room, there was a bar with 4 dancers and, you know, an upright piano and Arthur Mitchell with a stick.
Yes.
And that was my inauguration to something that I didn't know what was going on. Wow. And, you know, I got the books from my friend and he said, no books, you know. And then, you know, I mean, it was like, follow me. And then I started improvising. And, you know, those 4, you know, one of the 4 students that were there taking that bar or that lesson from him was you. It was the most crazy scenes. It was Lydia Barca, Sheila Rohan,
Yes.
and you.
That's right. So you were a pianist.
I wanted to be a concert pianist and travel all over the world as a concert pianist.
So you were not thinking about being a composer?
No,
How
never.
did that happen? Because look, now you've written operas and ballets and amazing music. You even wrote a beautiful piece for my cats. Remember that?
Oh my God, I have to see where that is. Oh,
I have it.
No, I would like to see that. Well, the thing is that I had no idea. In Cuba, I wrote some songs because my brother had a little, what we call a combo. It's a little ensemble.
Mhm.
And him and I, we used to sing. Oh, I sang so much with my brother. Yes, yes. And sometimes I would change, depending on what instrument he didn't have.
Mhm.
At one point I was a drummer, and at another point I was the bass player. Crazy.
But that's how you could be a composer. You knew all these different ways of having the music work.
We will, and at the conservatory we will be actually the regimental, of a French training, and very, very, very into solfege and all that. But the weekends, everything was improvising.
Mhm.
And playing with all the other colleagues through the conservatory. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's for me was very handy at Dance Theater of Harlem,
Sure.
because I jumped from one thing to another, another. And one day Arthur asked me to write a piece, because he wanted to do a choreography. So the approach, write a piece, I'll do the choreography. And that's the birth of Tones.
Tones, yes.
And we, you remember, we did it in chunks.
We did it in chunks. We started the first movement, we did for a long time, just tones. But then you added the second movement and the last movement.
Exactly, yes.
Wow, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You enjoyed that? Did that start a flame in you to be a composer?
Well, not necessarily, I mean, when I wrote that piece, in fact, every time that I see the score, I said, oh my God, because at the time I was not studying composition. I was still, doing the piano validation of my degrees. And, but I went to the library and I took a lot of books, theory and structure and things like that. And so on my own, I sort of like put the piece together. Yes.
Was it hard? Was it hard to do?
Well, I mean, actually the structure emerged of the choreography.
Okay, yes.
So, I mean, the only thing is that I had to negotiate what was going to be the musical component that was sort of like not mirror or copycat the structure, but it had to make sense.
So did Arthur Mitchell ask you for specific things?
Not necessarily.
No.
Not
Because
necessarily.
I'm thinking about, he of course grew up and worked with George Balanchine, who had such a close relationship with Stravinsky, and I'm sure he observed that relationship.
Yes.
And I wonder if he was making that same thing happen with you.
Exactly, yes. Basically, what he was much more transparent in what he wanted to was rhythmically speaking. He will do things rhythmically,
Yes.
and then I would sort of like really took his rhythmic phrasing,
I get it. Yes.
and then I would create something where the would be very, very intertwined with the music. So in the piece in a way is very rhythmical.
Absolutely. And that, of course, was a huge characteristic of the way that he taught it as well. It was
exactly
all about the rhythm.
Yeah. Everything about rhythm. Right. The second movement is the only one that I nowadays realize that it has some influences of some of the canción type of I won't call it canción. I mean, it's like song, you
Yeah.
know, but the Latin American song, you know, with la canción. I mean, it has some of that here and there, you know, which makes the whole thing more wavy. The rhythm is not so punctuated.
So driving, yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
You wrote many ballets for Dance Theater of Harlem. Do you have
Yes.
a favorite?
Favorite? Well, all of them had something, you know. There's a ballet that I did with Walter Rains called Haiku. And there's some things in that ballet that still touch me when I hear it for a certain reason. Besides that, that's scoped with each haiku, and each haiku has some kind of an image.
Right.
Therefore, I mean, what that image created in me as a visionary of sound is something that I relate to still to this day. And also, I think that I was so young at that time, you know, I mean, but by the time I wrote Tones, that was my first one. But I have been only about 3 years into composition when I started writing haiku. And writing for Dance Theater of Harlem was actually so freeing for me because I mean, I could do haiku, which is actually with Japanese influence, and then I could do Dougla.
Yes.
Which was back to the Caribbean, back to, I mean, you know, I mean, Trinidad, which is a little bit different from Cuba, you see. And then Geoffrey Holder, which he knew so much about his culture.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about his culture in terms of the Hindu influence.
Yeah.
And mixing that with the Africano rhythm patterns, you know, influenced already by the Hindu, you see.
Yes, exactly.
Because
So
that's why that's the reason why in Latin America you have so many different manifestations of rhythm.
Because you have all these cultures and they all have their own expression. Yes. Wow. Wow.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about how Dougla came together. Did you write it out? Did you talk it out? How did that work?
Yes, well, Dougla, I believe that, you know, had to do with the invitation of Arthur Mitchell to Geoffrey Holder to create a ballet, you know. And he always wanted to do ballets, at least at that time, what I understood, he wanted to do something to really, really sort of like show the culture, you know, his culture.
Yes.
So in one of those discussions about what he was going to do, he whistled to me a tune, you know, I believe it was his own tune, you know. I don't know if the tune was actually also in reference to the you know, the different influences that had to do with Hindu music. Because I mean, turns, twists and turns.
Yes. What we hear in the flute.
In that language, you can, you know. So what I did is that I transcribed the tune. Yeah, it's like when somebody sings a melody to you, and then you write the melody, and then on top of that melody, you build.
I see.
You see? So what I built is all of the percussion. And it was his influence and my influence. You see, and merging both things.
Yeah.
And discussing how to do it, what instruments to use, how to bring color.
Yes.
The instruments, which was imparted into the musicians.
Yes.
You know, and how to keep the polyrhythmia. I mean, the polyrhythmia is a language of rhythms, you know, in such a way that it would be transparent and it would not upset the entire ballet.
Right. I was so upset that I couldn't be at your performance for the New York Philharmonic. You wrote something for them, and I hear such wonderful things.
Yes, it's a piece called Stride, and it was dedicated to Susan B. Anthony in celebration of the 19th Amendment.
Exactly.
And the last performance of that piece was the day of her birthday. She would have been 100 years. It was 100 years, you know, anniversary.
That's so beautiful. Wow. So no regrets about being a composer then, huh?
Yeah, no regrets about being a composer. And also another thing that I am very grateful from Arthur and Dance Theater of Harlem is being a conductor.
Yes, you were our first conductor.
I know, I know. And since that, I mean, it's like my first opera. I conducted all of the performances in Europe and then in Mexico. And, I mean, it have been really, really, really a tremendous, surprising life.
Yes, I'll
It's
say.
not what I thought. I'm not in Paris.
No, no, you're not embarrassed.
No, I'm not concertizing all over the world, you know.
This is better. This is even better.
Well, I mean, but I get very nostalgic when I sit on the piano, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us this time. We're so excited that we're going to be showing Dougla this week, and this conversation will be part of that preparation for Dougla.
So thank you, Virginia.
Thank you, Tania. This is wonderful. And to be continued.
To be continued, yes. Bye-bye.